Wanting to humiliate a poor old man, a rich man invites him to play the piano at his fancy party. The young and spoiled Curtis had been causing trouble wherever he went, and his stay at his reserved and lonely grandmother house was no different, marked by his selfish behavior. However, Curtis had one more surprise for the family. He invited the humble gardener Vincent to play the piano at a luxurious party. What Curtis didn't expect was the unforgettable surprise he was about to witness. Curtis, a 20-year-old young man, was about to experience a significant change in his life. His parents, worried about his rebellious and irresponsible behavior, decided to send him to live with his grandmother Estelle, a reclusive lady who lived in an imposing mansion on the outskirts of the city. The young man was the epitome of a spoiled and problematic youth. He spent his nights at endless parties, slept in late, and never fulfilled his responsibilities. His parents no longer knew what to do. His grades in college were plummeting, his companions were questionable, and his spending was exorbitant. Curtis lived as if there were no tomorrow, without caring about the consequences of his actions. Reluctant and upset, Curtis arrived at his grandmother mansion on a sunny summer afternoon. The house was enormous, with well-kept gardens and an inviting pool. Estelle received him with a warm hug, but Curtis barely reciprocated the gesture. He was furious for being exiled to this place he considered old-fashioned and boring. Estelle was a lady in her early 70s, elegant and kind despite her blindness, caused by a degenerative disease a few years earlier. She maintained a dignified posture and a sharp mind. Her routine was peaceful, divided between listening to her old records, piano sessions, and conversations with the few house employees. The first days of living together were tense. Curtis continued his rebellious behavior, coming home late, making noise, and being rude to the staff. Estelle tried to talk to her grandson, explaining the importance of having responsibilities and respect for others, but the young man seemed unyielding. One day, the mansion gardener suddenly resigned. Estelle was worried as the gardens were her pride and needed constant care. It was then that one of the employees mentioned Vincent, a gentleman who used to pass by the mansion and had done some work for the neighbors. Vincent was a simple man in his 70s, with gray hair and a gentle smile. He dressed humbly, but was always clean and presentable. Despite his frail appearance, he was skilled and dedicated to his work. Estelle, without meeting him personally, authorized his temporary hiring to care for the garden and perform small repairs on the property. On a tranquil afternoon, while the gardener Vincent was trimming some rose bushes near the house, he heard a gentle melody coming from the large residence. Curious, he approached silently and saw through the glass the silhouette of Estelle seated at the piano. Her fingers glided across the keys with grace and precision, producing music that deeply touched the old gardener heart. Absorbed in the beauty of that moment, Vincent didn't notice the approach of Curtis, who came from the pool area with a disdainful expression on his face. "What are you doing snooping around here, old man?" Curtis asked arrogantly. Surprised, Vincent turned to the young man and replied humbly, "Forgive me, young man. I was just admiring the beautiful music. You know, I used to play the piano when I was younger, but it's been a long time since I've had access to such a magnificent instrument." Curtis rolled his eyes, clearly uninterested in the elderly man's explanation. "Whatever, just don't go snooping around, understood?" he said, walking away. Days passed, and Estelle's birthday was approaching. The elderly woman, though reluctant, agreed to have a small celebration organized at the mansion. Her grandson Curtis, of course, saw this as an opportunity to cause some kind of trouble. On the day of the party, Vincent was once again hired to help with the preparations and take care of the guests' car parking. He wore his best, though simple outfit, and was determined to do his job as best as he could. As the guests arrived and settled in the main hall, Curtis came up with an idea to provoke his family and at the same time humiliate the old gardener. He approached Vincent with a malicious smile. "Hey, old man," Curtis called out, "we need a pianist for a special moment for my grandmother. Didn't you say you knew how to play before?" Before Vincent could respond, Curtis pushed him towards the room, making him sit in front of the grand piano. The guests looked curiously at the unusual sight of an apparently simple man sitting at the instrument. Curtis, with a sneer, announced loudly, "Attention everyone, I have a special surprise for my dear grandmother. Our talented gardener is going to treat us to a musical performance. The young man expected Vincent to make a fool of himself, maybe playing out of tune notes or simply freezing in front of the instrument. However, to everyone's surprise, especially Curtis, Vincent's hands played the keys with mastery. A soft and captivating melody filled the air. The old gardener fingers danced across the keyboard with impressive ease, as if they had never stopped playing. The guests, initially skeptical, soon found themselves enchanted by the music. Estelle, sitting in her favorite armchair, tilted her head, focusing on the sounds reaching her ears. Her expression gradually shifted from curiosity to astonishment and finally to deep emotion. As the music developed, tears began to stream down the elderly woman's face. Suddenly, she stood up, trembling, and exclaimed with a choked voice, "Vincent, is that you?" The hall fell silent, except for the sound of the piano. All eyes turned to Estelle, confused by her reaction. How could she know the gardener name, and how could she recognize him solely by the sound of his music? Vincent, upon hearing his name, abruptly stopped playing and turned around. His eyes widened upon seeing Estelle, and despite the years that had passed, he recognized her instantly. "Estelle," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The story that unfolded before the astonished guests was one of a lost and rediscovered love. Vincent and Estelle had met in their youth when he was a young and talented music teacher, and she his most dedicated student. Estelle came from a wealthy, traditional family, while Vincent was of humble origin. Despite their social differences, the two young people fell hopelessly in love. Their connection went beyond piano lessons. They shared dreams, laughter, and a love for music that transcended the barriers imposed by society. However, the romance was discovered by Estelle's parents, who were horrified at the idea of their daughter being involved with someone they considered inferior. They used all their influence to separate the couple, threatening to ruin Vincent's career and even send him far away from the city. Before being forced to separate, Estelle and Vincent composed a piece of music together, a piece that symbolized their love and the promises they made to each other. It was this same melody that Vincent played now, decades later, still held in his heart as a precious memory of that interrupted love. Years passed, and both followed different paths. Estelle got married, had children and grandchildren, eventually becoming a widow. Vincent also got married, but never completely forgot his first and true love. Fate, however, seemed to have other plans for them, as the truth came to light. Curtis watched the scene, jaw dropped. His attempt at provocation and humiliation had turned into something completely unexpected. Unintentionally, he had facilitated the reunion of two hearts that time and circumstances had separated. The guests, moved by the story, watched in silence as Estelle and Vincent approached each other, their hands touching hesitantly, as if they feared it was all just a dream. "I never forgot you, Vincent," Estelle whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Our song has always been in my heart." At that moment, Curtis felt something change within himself. For the first time, he realized the impact his actions could have on the lives of others, both for good and for bad. In the days that followed, the mansion gained a new life. Vincent began to visit the house regularly, no longer as a gardener, but as a special guest of Estelle. The two of them enjoyed every moment together, sharing stories, laughing over old memories, and, of course, making music. Curtis, for his part, began to gradually change his behavior, inspired by the story of his grandmother and Vincent. He started to take more interest in the lives of others, listening to their stories. He began to help care for his grandmother and even started taking piano lessons with Vincent. The mansion, once silent and gloomy, was now filled with music and laughter. Estelle and Vincent enjoyed each day as if it were their last, making up for lost time with small gestures of affection and long conversations. They knew they had been blessed with a second chance and were determined not to waste it. For Curtis, this experience was transformative. He learned that appearances can be deceiving, that hasty judgments can prevent us from meeting extraordinary people, and that true love can overcome even the most difficult circumstances. The most important lesson, however, was that our actions, even when motivated by negative intentions, can result in unexpectedly positive consequences. The universe works in mysterious ways, and sometimes our greatest mistakes can lead to the most beautiful successes. As he watched his grandmother and Vincent playing the piano together, their hands intertwined over the keys, Curtis smiled. He had arrived at that house as a rebellious and aimless young man, but was leaving as someone who was beginning to understand the true value of life, love, and second chances. The mansion, which once seemed like a prison to Curtis, was now a home full of life and possibilities. And although he still had much to learn and grow, he knew he was on the right path. After all, as Estelle and Vincent's story had proven, it is never too late for a new beginning. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe for more awesome stories like this. Stay blessed and healthy. Thank you for watching and see you in the next story. Bye.